We're going to go back in time to 2009, Back Bay, Boston. Now, if you're not quite sure what Back Bay is really like as a city, I'll give you a nice image about it. It's a really affluent, polished neighborhood. I'm talking really clean white streets, those designer boutiques, farmer markets. It's like the kind of neighborhood where rich people live their rich people lives, and people assume that it's pretty safe majority of the time. Now, there was one young woman who was in the Back Bay area, and her name was Trisha Laffler. She was actually just there traveling for work, as she's originally from Las Vegas and she works as a stripper full time. But on the side, she does something else to earn a little bit of money, and that's posting ads on Craigslist offering massage services for people. Now, if you're not sure what Craigslist is, because we have gone back in time by many, many years, it's essentially a website where you can go and post listing for services, jobs, housing, like you name it. They had pretty much everything on there. And you did this by posting ads, and then people would reach out to you and say, hey, I'm interested, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. Now, for Trisha, she had posted an ad which said, if you'd like to spend some time with a sweet blonde, give me a call so we can spend some time together. Now, obviously, she was just offering massage services, but we can assume that there was some other spicy stuff going on behind the scenes as well. But we can't really judge her for it. She was hustling, she was making a living, and it's a tough world out here. And Trisha has been in this line of business for a while. She's not exactly new to this type of lifestyle. On that day of April 10th, 2009, there was a client who reached out to her and found her ad and said that he was interested in receiving one of her massage services. So Trisha was already working that day. She was a bit tired. It'd been a long day, but she made some pretty decent money, but she was still focused. She was determined to do another job, get that money, get that bag. This was pretty routine for her. Another client, another hotel, another transaction. Now, because Trisha has been in this line of work for a while, she knows how to protect herself. Being a sex worker is not always going to land you in the safest places, so you have to keep your wits about you. And this was Trisha. She wasn't naive, and she knew how to deal with sketchy clients. But the client that Trisha had met up with was a pretty regular looking guy. I mean, there was really nothing sus about him or anything that really stood out. He was young, he was polite, calm, he had a really chill demeanor, and he was well spoken as well. There was nothing about him that kind of stood out and said, oh, I'm going to be very aggressive or attack you in a sexual or threatening way. So for Trisha, she was like, okay, this is like a pretty regular dude. Everything should go pretty chill from here. And for us women, we have really great sense of intuition when we think someone's being a bit sketchy and we need to protect ourselves or avoid certain men. But for Trisha, in this particular situation, she really felt at ease in that nothing was gonna go wrong. This really was just a regular guy looking to get a massage service done. Trisha and the man head over to the hotel room together, and once they arrive in the room, the whole energy just shifts very suddenly. Without any warning or without any argument, the man just suddenly pulls a gun out and points it at Trisha. Suddenly, the power dynamic has changed. What was supposed to be just her offering a service to a customer, she is now at his will, and she has to comply with everything that he says. He continues to zip tie her and restrain her hands behind her back so she can basically she can't do anything. She can't fight back. And while he was doing this, he was very calm, very methodical. He wasn't panicking. So it was almost as if he had done something like this before. This clearly wasn't new to him. He then proceeds to steal all of her cash, which was around $800 from all of the services that she had done that day. So after a hard day of working, he stole all her money. And at this point, Trisha's thinking to herself, I'm just gonna comply. I'm focused on getting out of here alive. Screw the money, it's not about that, it's about my life. And after he took her money, he just left the room and left her there tied up. And thankfully, Trisha was able to break free and go and get some help. Now, Trisha had just gone through a really traumatic experience. She's shaken up, but thankfully she's alive, and she decides to go to the police straight away and report what happened. She tells them everything from meeting him, what he looks like. She gave them his physical description, the fact that he pulled out a gun on her, zip tied her. She was very cooperative and very clear and concise with her retelling of events. Now, initially, the police viewed this incident as a standalone robbery. It was just an unfortunate situation, and they didn't really have it on their high list of priorities. It was kind of a low urgency thing for them, and I don't doubt in my mind this may have something to do with the fact that she's a sex worker, and oftentimes people who are in this line of work are often marginalized from society and are viewed as lower class. And it's really tragic that that's the case, because she is a human being who had gone through something traumatic, and she deserves to feel safe and to have some sense of closure and justice. Now, at this point, the police had an opportunity to intervene, to find out who was this guy and why did he do this to her? Did he have other victims? Was he planning to do something else to someone else? But at this point, there was no wider pattern. So for now, this really was just a standalone attack. Until around 4 days later, in the same Back Bay area, there was a woman named Jalissa Brisman, and she was a 26-year-old woman also working as an escort, so in the same line of work as Trisha. She was 26 years old and also working as an escort, and she did the same thing as Trisha, where she was posting ads on Craigslist and offering her services as a sort of side hustle to gain some extra cash. Now, on that day of April 14th, she had a client who reached out to her and said, "Hey, I'm interested in your services. Can we please meet up?" So of course she says, "Yeah, let's meet up at the Marriott Hotel." As we know, that's a pretty nice hotel. So I'm quite surprised they decided to do this type of deed there. And I wonder how exactly that went down. But anyhow, this was a pretty routine meeting. There was really nothing out of the ordinary. Now, surveillance footage from the hotel shows Jalissa and the man entering an elevator. Everything is pretty calm and like unremarkable. It was just two people standing in an elevator going up, but this man was wearing a baseball cap, so his face wasn't clearly visible, and he was also carrying a black bag. Now, a little later at around 9 p.m. on that day, guests at the hotel hear a disturbance. And I'm not talking, oh, I hear a bit of noise coming from someone else's hotel room, a bit of shuffling, like, oh, they're probably just living their life. Like, no, this was a disturbance to the point that it was giving people some concerns, so some of them decided to call the police. And no one could have guessed what was happening in that room. When Jalissa and that man entered the hotel room, things escalated very quickly. The man attempted to rob Jalissa, the same man who tried to steal Trisha's money just 4 days earlier. And the situation escalates. Jalissa resists. She is saying, "You are not taking my money, not after I just spent a hard day earning it." She fought back. She was determined. But in retaliation, the man takes out his gun and shoots her multiple times. A little later on, police arrive at the hotel after someone rang them saying that there was a disturbance. And they did the standard procedure where they canvassed the hotel, they were securing the scene, and then they headed over to the hotel room. When they entered, they found Jalissa dead on the floor. Now, this was a turning point for Boston police, because now they have another escort worker who is also zip-tied in the same way that Trisha was zip-tied. And their money was stolen, like Trisha's money was stolen. But this time, Jalissa was found dead. She didn't survive like Trisha did. Now they realize this has escalated. This wasn't just robbery anymore. This was murder. Very quickly, the police realized that there is a pattern emerging. So their response was pretty immediate this time. They reviewed the surveillance footage that was at the hotel, and they saw the man in the elevator with her, the one that was wearing the baseball cap, and they weren't able to see his face, so they decided to release his footage to the public, asking if anyone has seen this person, because this person is a person of interest in a murder case. Does anyone know who this man is? Investigators start working backwards from digital evidence. They decide to look at who Jalissa was in contact with on her Craigslist. Now, we have to keep in mind, this is 2009, so technology is not advanced as it is nowadays in 2026, but they still were able to do some things. They were able to find the email of the man that Jalissa was in contact with, the same man that she had met that day that she had died, and he was asking her about her services, so they decided to retrace the IP. Now, at first, this is all classified information that is owned by Craigslist, right? But when the police reached out to Craigslist telling them, this is the situation, we're trying to find someone, They were very compliant and said, okay, here it is. They weren't trying to hide anything. They were really trying to aid the situation and investigation. Now, the police decide to trace the IP address and it matched to a Facebook account. And when they took a look at this Facebook account, it belonged to a man named Philip Markoff. And once the police identified Philip, the police started quietly monitoring him. They were watching his every move. And I'm not talking about just online. In real life. There was even a time where they followed him to a grocery store and they were able to collect his fingerprints from a grocery cart that he had used. And he used those same prints to compare the prints that were at the crime scene where Jalissa was murdered, and they were a match. Philip also seems to match the man that was in the hotel surveillance footage. Even though the face is not visibly clear, the build is relatively the same and it was the same general appearance. Now, at this point, this was enough digital and physical evidence to identify him as the main suspect in this case. And the police move pretty quickly. On April 20th, just 6 days after Jalissa's murder, they arrest Philip Markoff while he was on the way to Connecticut with his fiancée, Megan McAllister. And now the Craigslist killer has a name. Now let's go back in time even more to better understand who was Philip Markoff and why did he do this? Philip was born on February 12th of 1986 and he was raised in New York City. He had a pretty middle-class upbringing, relatively good life and a good early childhood. There was nothing about his early years that stand out as a red flag or that could indicate him becoming violent later on. Now, Philip was known to be a pretty good hardworking student. He was very ambitious, very disciplined, very well liked by all of his peers and by his professors, and he was a pretty smart guy as well. Now, all of these traits helped him gain admission to State University of New York at Albany to study biology. So Philip seemed like a really regular guy. There was nothing about him that stood out that was weird. He was just a hardworking student who was focused on their future. Now, believe it or not, while Philip was meeting all of these random women through Craigslist ad, he was actually engaged, like I had said before, to a woman named Megan McAllister. Now, the two of them had met at State University of New York. This was back in 2005, and they were both students there. And their relationship was pretty normal between them. It's like your typical university experience. They got together, and over time, their relationship grew, and they got closer with one another. And they were pretty committed to one another from a pretty young age. Megan and Philip were together for a couple of years before he ended up proposing to her. And they were seen by their friends and family as a really loving and stable couple. So everything about them was just almost picture perfect. Like, I'm talking your stereotypical, very cutesy, very loving couple where everyone would be like, oh, they're so cute together. Like, that was basically them. So no one would have suspected what was truly going on behind the scenes. And the fact that Philip was living this double life. All of his friends, his family, his fiance saw him as this really charismatic, smart guy who was studying biology and had a beautiful fiance. And Megan thought that as well. She thought, oh my gosh, I love my fiance. We're going to build a future together. I can't wait to get married. But she had no idea what he was truly capable of. In 2008, Philip moved to Boston to attend Boston University School to study medicine. And he started the school in the fall of 2008. And as you know, medicine is a really vigorous and highly competitive course. Not just in 2008, but nowadays. Everyone knows it's long hours, you don't get to sleep much, you're studying all the time, and it's just a very intense work environment. But nonetheless, Philip was still seen as a really serious, focused, and just a highly capable student. Like, he pretty much just got shit done. Like, he was always on it and very well liked by everyone around him. And it's just so crazy that there was no warning signs whatsoever, like no erratic behavior. Nothing about him stood out that was a red flag to anybody in his life. There was no disciplinary issues at school as well. He was just overall a really great student. So it's crazy how well he was able to blend in and basically sway everyone. And the fact that he was studying to become a doctor, it means that he was going to be around patients, people who are sick, people who are vulnerable and need help. And they were going to trust him to heal them. While he is out meeting women through Craigslist and killing them and robbing robbing them of their money. So, this is why when Philip was identified as the Craigslist killer, people just could not believe it. Now, we're going to go back to present day in 2009 once Philip was identified and the media just explodes over this case. The idea of someone using Craigslist to commit crimes was just unfathomable to people, and everyone was really shocked about it. There was just widespread disbelief. And this was also because of the fact that there's just such a contrast between his clean cut image. He's highly educated, good upbringing, has a fiance, like in a good, loving relationship. He's studying medicine to become a doctor. And the contrast of that, of who he is, with the violence that he committed to these poor women was just crazy. It was just insane. And the media, they portrayed this case in a little bit of a weird way because some of the headlines emphasized how he was a medical student and an honor student. How could someone like this do something like that? Like, you get the gist of it. And I honestly, personally, I hate when cases like this are portrayed in a light like that, where they almost try to make you feel bad for the perpetrator, where they say things like, he had so much promise though, he was such a young man, he was studying to become a doctor. There are so many cases throughout time where men abuse and kill and harm women, and when they are caught, they are sometimes portrayed in this almost like victim light. And I'm thinking, what about the women? Are women portrayed in that type of light? And probably not, because they were also sex workers. And unfortunately, even nowadays in 2026, it's not that different from how it was in 2009. Sure, maybe nowadays people are a little bit more open-minded with things like this, but there's still a lot of stigma and negativity and prejudice against people who work in sex work. Now, when there was this whole media frenzy about this case, attention obviously started going towards the family. People wanted to know, what was Megan McAllister, his fiance, thinking about this whole thing? Now, initially, she defended him. She refused to believe that he was capable of such violence, and she was clearly shocked. She was saying things like, I love Philip, and this is a complete nightmare. He is so beautiful inside and out. He wouldn't even hurt a fly. Now, let's not judge Megan too harshly, because we have to think about what it must have been like for her to be in this situation. Her life essentially got flipped upside down. Like I said before, at any moment, your life can just change. And she loved him. She was going to spend the rest of her life with him and marry him. So, of course, at first, she was going to stand by him and defend him. I mean, if you were in this situation, what would you have done? I personally don't blame her. It must have been such a nightmare, and she probably felt really blindsided by this whole thing. And I wonder, how was Philip able to live this double life? How did Megan have no idea that he was going out and meeting with all of these women? But most of all, why did Philip do it? Well, when investigators took a closer look, it became clear that Philip was hiding a couple of things. On the outside, he was a disciplined med student, but on the inside, he had serious financial problems. I'm talking around $130,000 in student loan debt. And of course, he was studying medicine, and I can't imagine how expensive school must have been. He was using multiple credit cards, and his debt just kept growing and growing and growing. But not only was he struggling with student loan debt, he also had a really bad compulsive gambling addiction. He would take frequent casino trips to Connecticut, and at certain points, he was losing thousands of dollars in a single night. His gambling debts were becoming huge, and because of this, he wasn't able to pay off any of his student loans as well. And it seemed like no one in his life had any idea what was going on with Philip. Like, they had no idea he was having all of these financial problems. The debt and financial problems obviously do not justify what Philip did, but investigators later identify these financial issues as a key motive in the crimes that he had committed. And these robberies weren't random. He clearly needed money fast, and he was very desperate, and to him, this probably seemed like the quickest and easiest way to get it. So with all of this debt and financial pressure building up, being a medical student, all of this stress from hiding it from his fiance and everyone in his life, Philip decided to take matters into his own hands and find victims on Craigslist. This started back in 2008, so Philip had been doing this for around a year before he had killed Jalissa Brissman. When investigators reviewed his online activity, they had seen that he was browsing through Craigslist's erotic services section, and he was specifically looking for things that offered massage services, escort listings, just obviously anything that was erotic. domestic, and he was primarily targeting women who were working independently, women he would be able to meet privately one-on-one with minimal paper trail. And clearly he knew who he wanted to target. He was very specific about this. He wanted to target vulnerable women, women he knew people wouldn't care about if they ended up on the news dead. Because, like I said before, it's so sad, but these people are often marginalized and looked down upon by others, and in a lot of cases, dehumanized as well. People don't view them as human beings. And he took this to his advantage. He used these women to plan and execute robberies, to steal money from them. And each time he did this, it was the exact same MO. Calm, polite demeanor, no alarm bells for the women. You know, they think he's just a regular guy there to get a massage service. And then suddenly, he would just switch and become so violent. Things would escalate. He'd pull out a gun. He would zip tie them, always restrain them. And a lot of these times, these victims were very hesitant to report that anything happened to them, probably out of fear of people not believing them or maybe something worse happening to them. Perhaps they thought Philip would come after them. He's probably threatened them. So a lot of these incidents, when they occurred, were treated as isolated, standalone robberies, and no one was able to make any of these connections early on. So this was how Philip was able to get away with this for so long. Now, as investigators dig deeper, they uncover a third incident. And this one takes place outside of Massachusetts. So not in the Back Bay area like Trisha and Jalissa. This one happened in Warwick, Rhode Island. And it happened on April 16th, just 2 days after Jalissa Brisman's murder. Now, this seems very intentional. He probably thought, okay, I had just killed this woman, which he usually never does. He only restrains them and robs them. But because Jalissa fought back, he killed her, and now he thought, okay, I have to take this outside of Massachusetts. So he decided to go to Warwick, Rhode Island. But what's crazy to me is that it was only 2 days later he decided to do this to another woman. He didn't wait. He wasted no time. And he doesn't really give me the impression of someone who's panicky or anxious. He was probably very calm. I mean, I think if you were worried about getting caught, you would give it a lot more time before you found your next victim. But Philip only did it 2 days later. And he ended up meeting with a woman named Cynthia Melton. Very similar process. She was advertising lap dance services on Craigslist. He had contacted her. They had met up at a hotel, and he quickly overpowered her with a gun, threatening her, like get down on your knees, ties her up, restrains her, and robs her and takes all of her money. And luckily, Cynthia reported no physical injuries. Obviously, she's very traumatized and shaken up, but thankfully she was able to come out of it alive. Now, all of this is the exact same behavioral patterns as all of the other cases. And it seems like every single time, it's more of a power play for Philip. He likes the feeling of being able to control the situation, to restrain these women against their will. They can't do anything but comply, otherwise you'll just kill them. Right, Philip? And it got me thinking, every single time he does this, it's the exact same procedure. So why did he kill Jalissa Brisman? What was different about her? And it was the fact that she fought back. She wasn't going to take any shit from him. She was a fighter. And now most of these women comply with him. They not let him tie them up, but they usually obviously have no choice. But Jalissa couldn't stand for it, and Philip didn't like this. It was all about control and intimidation over these women. And now we have one fighting back, leveling herself to him. He didn't like it, so he killed her. And it's just so scary to think that the earlier victims were so close to facing a really bad outcome as well. When police arrested Philip and were able to obtain a search warrant to go through his apartment, they found a lot more concerning pieces of evidence that he tried to conceal. When they were searching his Boston apartment, that he shared with his fiancée, by the way, so she had no idea that any of these items were in the house, they had found a handgun that was hidden inside a hollowed out copy of Grey's Anatomy. So yeah, that's like a little bit ironic because obviously Grey's Anatomy is a show about doctors and it follows the lives of these surgeons. So it's almost very symbolically unsettling that he chose to do this. There was also ammunition that was taped to the back of the dryer. So it was in a hidden place, but accessible for Philip in case he needed it. They also found zip ties, duct tape, and these were all items that were consistent with the restraint that he did against these women and how he conducted those robberies. And they also found women's underwear. Yeah, and none of them belonged to Megan. So he had kept his victims' underwear as souvenirs which is just, ew, really gross. When Philip was arrested, they also tested the bottom of his shoes for DNA, and they found Jalissa Brissman's DNA, which now directly links him to the scene of the crime as well. So at this point, they have all of this evidence. They know it's Philip, so they charge him with first-degree murder, armed robbery, and kidnapping. Now, despite all of the physical and forensic evidence against him, he pleads not guilty. When it was released to the public on who Philip Markoff really was, the Boston University School of Medicine responds very quickly. They kick him out straight away and said, we don't have anything to do with him. Like, screw this guy. We don't want any association. So his medical career effectively ended overnight. And as evidence was coming out, denial pretty much became impossible. The case against him is just too overwhelming with all of this physical evidence, the patterns of behavior, multiple victims. Now, for Megan, at this point, she's no longer defending him like she initially was when the news first broke. I mean, at this point, there's no denying the situation. And Megan breaks off the engagement as well. The future that they had planned together collapses, and she decides to visit him in jail just one last time. When she visits him in jail, she essentially tells him that I'm not going to visit you anytime soon, if ever. This is goodbye. It's over between us. His double life has been completely exposed and he lost everything. His career, his relationship, his public identity, all down the drain. Philip was held without bail at the Nashua Street Jail in Boston. And while he was incarcerated, he actually attempted to take his own life multiple times. 3 times, actually. Shortly after he was arrested, when his fiancée broke up with him and on the day that was supposed to be their wedding. And don't get me wrong, I have no sympathy for him. He doesn't deserve any of it. He made these choices. He harmed those women. He killed Jalissa. Everything that happened to him was the consequences of his own actions. On April 15th of 2010, Philip was found dead in his jail cell at just 24 years old. He took his own life. This time he was successful with it, and it was ruled as asphyxiation, which is basically the state of being deprived by oxygen. Now, this next part is pretty graphic. The details are quite disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised. They had found that he had self-inflicted wounds from a makeshift knife that he was able to somehow use. Keep in mind that he had tried to take his life multiple times, so each time they took more and more items away from him to ensure his own safety, but he still was able to find a way to make something sharp enough to slash the arteries that was on his neck, his legs, and his ankles. Now, these are very specific vital points of your arteries. If you get cut there, you bleed out relatively fast. And of course, he knew this because he studied medicine. He was going to become a doctor. But not only that, he purposely wrapped a plastic bag around his head and he had stuffed toilet paper down his throat. So he didn't just cut himself, he choked himself. Again, the death was from asphyxiation and not from blood loss. So Philip really wanted to make sure that he could not be resuscitated. He wanted to die. And if you thought that was disturbing, there is just one more piece of detail that is more disturbing than any of it. He had written Megan's name on the wall, and not with a pen, with blood. So he was able to somehow cut himself, write Megan's name on the wall, and then choke and die. No idea how he was able to do all of that. It's just so eerie and creepy to think about. And not even that, there was photographs of Philip and Megan scattered all across the floor as well. So it really seems that Megan breaking up with Philip was kind of like the last straw for him. Even though he's demented and he did all of these awful things, he seemed to genuinely have loved her and he just couldn't take it after she decided to leave him. So it begs the question though, why did he do all of these things in the first place? So because Philip unfortunately died while he was awaiting trial, there was never a verdict, no formal conviction. And the many families of the victims had a lot of questions that remained unanswered. They never got to hear any accountability taken by him in court. And the case essentially closes without any resolution. And of course, Jalissa's family especially were very angered by this. The family's attorney told multiple news outlets that first he took their daughter from them, then and he denied the opportunity of closure from them. In the wake of the murder, Craigslist also removed their erotic services section. And it's nice to see for once that they actually wanted to help this case and aid the process. They helped the police with the investigation, and they also acknowledged the fact that the platform did play a role in facilitating Philip in his process of finding victims. In the following years, the Craigslist killer quickly takes hold and becomes a fixture in true crime media and super popular in pop culture as well. And the case is often used as a cautionary example of danger that's hidden in plain sight. When I first heard about this case, it wasn't actually from research and YouTube, it was actually from the movie The Craigslist Killer. And the movie also does quite a good job of portraying just how regular of a guy Philip was. Very nonchalant, very calm demeanor. And I feel like oftentimes in some of these cases we cover on this channel or just in true crime in general, a lot of these killers have like a creepy or obvious look to them. Like in one of our videos that we did about Stephanie Scott, which is a really interesting case you should take a look at. The guy who had killed her had like a look to him, a vibe to him that was like very clearly creepy. But Philip was not like that. He just looked like any regular guy. Like there doesn't have to be a look to be a killer, to be an abuser, to be someone who is dangerous, that harms women. It could literally be anyone, your neighbor, your teacher, your doctor. So this is just a gentle reminder to just be safe out there, guys, because you never know who it might be. Now, despite all of this overwhelming evidence, there was still a lot of confusion that remained. People who knew him really struggled to accept the fact that this was the situation and that who they thought he was wasn't true, especially for Megan. She later admits that she still doesn't understand how the man she loved was capable of such violence. And if I were Megan, I would honestly have trust issues for the rest of my life. And even though there was no trial and unfortunately no closure for Jalissa's family and other victims, the family still focused on preserving her memory. They wanted to remember Jalissa for who she was and not just how she died. She wasn't just a headline, she was a human being and she was loved. May she rest in peace. What did you guys think about this case? How do you guys think Philip was able to go unnoticed for so long by his fiance, by his friends, by his family? And what do you think about Philip overall? I feel like he's a pretty interesting character. He has an interesting psychology to him. This is a little bit of a different case compared to other cases we've done on this channel. So I'd love to know what you guys think. Please feel free to share any thoughts that you have in the comment section down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching today's video and for taking the time to learn about today's case. If you found this video informative, please don't forget to leave a like, a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.